What happens when trust shatters in the dead of night, leaving behind only betrayal and a storm-soaked road? Imagine a pregnant woman abandoned by her husband at a desolate gas station, clutching nothing but fragments of hope while he celebrates his freedom miles away. But this is more than a story of heartbreak. It's about resilience, redemption, and the unexpected kindness of strangers that changes everything. As secrets unravel, lives are rebuilt, and love finds its way back from the ashes, one question lingers. Can you ever truly leave your past behind? Dive into a tale where courage meets destiny, and discover how even the darkest nights can lead to dawn. The highway stretched endlessly before them, its dark asphalt barely illuminated by the faint glow of the moon. Katherine Monroe shifted uncomfortably in the passenger seat, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly, while the other gripped the armrest for support. At 8 months pregnant, every bump in the road sent waves of discomfort rippling through her body. Yet she stayed silent, unwilling to add to the suffocating tension that had settled like a heavy fog inside the vehicle. Beside her sat Robert Calloway, her husband, the man she had once believed would be her partner through everything. His gaze was fixed intently on the road, his fingers tapping impatiently against the steering wheel in an unbroken rhythm. For over 2 hours now, he hadn't uttered a single word, and the silence between them was deafening. Something wasn't right. Katherine could feel it in the pit of her stomach, gnawing at her like an unseen predator. "Robert," she ventured cautiously, keeping her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her chest. "Can we stop for a minute? I need to use the restroom." Her words hung awkwardly in the air as if waiting for permission to exist. Robert's grip on the wheel tightened visibly, his knuckles turning white under the dim light of the dashboard. His jaw clenched, but after what felt like an eternity, he finally responded, not with words but with action. Without warning, he yanked the car toward the next exit, pulling into a small, nearly deserted gas station surrounded by nothingness. The harsh glare of a flickering streetlight cast eerie shadows across the cracked pavement. Katherine exhaled softly, relief washing over her momentarily. "I'll be quick," she assured him, reaching for the door handle. But Robert didn't acknowledge her. Instead, he sat frozen behind the wheel, his expression unreadable. A small, nagging voice whispered in the back of her mind that something was off, yet exhaustion weighed so heavily on her that she pushed the thought aside. Carefully maneuvering herself out of the car, she made her way toward the restroom, each step feeling heavier than the last. Inside, the dim fluorescent light buzzed above her head, casting a pale glow over the cracked mirror. She turned on the faucet, splashing cool water onto her face. When she looked up, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her, tired, drained, and alone. "Just a little longer," she whispered to herself, trying to summon some semblance of hope. "Soon we'll be home. Soon everything will be okay." Taking a deep breath, she dried her hands and stepped outside, only to stop dead in her tracks. The parking spot where Robert had been moments ago was empty. Panic surged through her veins, and her heart began pounding violently against her ribs. "Robert," she called out, her voice trembling. Silence answered her. Frantically, she reached for her phone, dialing his number with shaking fingers. 1 ring. 2 rings, then a text notification interrupted the call. Her stomach dropped as she opened it. "This is over. Take care of yourself. Asterisk." Her breath hitched, her grip tightening around the phone until her knuckles turned white. No, this couldn't be happening. She tried calling again, but it went straight to voicemail. Another attempt yielded the same result. Reality crashed over her like a tidal wave, leaving her gasping for air. Robert Calloway, the man she had trusted, loved, and built a life with, was never coming back. The world tilted beneath her feet as her legs grew weak, forcing her to clutch the phone tighter. The image burned into her mind. Robert laughing, drinking, celebrating. He had left her, the father of her child, and he wasn't coming back. Before she could fully process the betrayal, another message appeared, from an unknown number this time. Dread coiled tightly in her chest as she opened it. The photo attached chilled her to the bone. There he was, Robert, sitting in a private beachside lounge, drink in hand, his arm draped casually around another woman, Lauren or Grace, as Katherine had suspected for months. The same woman he had laughed off as just a friend. And now, while she stood abandoned at a rundown gas station, heavily pregnant and utterly alone, he was celebrating. The cold night air pressed against her skin, but no chill could match the icy realization settling in her chest. Robert Calloway was never coming back. The world tilted beneath her feet as her legs buckled, forcing her to clutch the phone tighter. The image burned into her mind, Robert laughing, drinking, celebrating. He had left her, the father of her child, and he wasn't coming back. The neon sign of the gas station flickered above her, its hum cutting through the vast silence of the night. A cold wind swept through the desolate landscape, carrying with it the promise of a storm brewing in the distance. Katherine's breath hitched unevenly, sharp and shallow, as she tried to force her brain to work through the rising panic. Think Valeria. Think. Her fingers trembled as she reached into her coat pocket, searching for her wallet. Nothing. A fresh wave of dread washed over her. Robert had taken everything. Her wallet, her credit cards, even her ID. She was completely alone. Turning back toward the gas station, she noticed the door was locked, the closed sign blinking mockingly at her. Panic clawed at her throat as she scanned the darkness for headlights. Nothing. Just an endless stretch of empty highway swallowed by the night. Then came a raindrop, followed by another. Within seconds, the sky opened up, unleashing a relentless downpour. The icy rain soaked through her coat, chilling her to the bone. Pulling the fabric tighter around herself, she forced her boots to splash against the wet pavement, determined to move, to do something. Anything but stand there, drowning in helplessness. But with every step, her body felt heavier. The exhaustion, the heartbreak, the sheer weight of betrayal pressed down on her like an invisible force. And then it happened, a sharp white-hot pain shot through her abdomen. Katherine gasped, doubling over and clutching her stomach. "No, not now," she muttered through gritted teeth. Her breath came in shallow, ragged pants, her pulse roaring in her ears. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, leaving her barely able to process it before her legs gave out. Her body slammed against a nearby streetlight for support as the world blurred around her, her vision darkening at the edges. She needed help now, but there was no one. No voices, no passing cars, just the rain, the wind, and the sound of her own labored breathing. Katherine realized, with growing terror, that she was going to collapse right there on the cold pavement. Her child, her baby, was in danger, and she was powerless to do anything about it. As her knees buckled, a pair of headlights sliced through the curtain of rain. A car slowed, its engine cutting off. The driver's door swung open, and a tall figure emerged, shielding himself with an umbrella. He moved toward her with urgency, concern etched across his face. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Katherine blinked through the rain, struggling to make out his features. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Another contraction ripped through her, and her body gave in. As darkness threatened to consume her, strong arms caught her just in time. "I've got you," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the chaos. Everything blurred, the storm, the pain, the fear. It all faded away as she was lifted into warmth. The scent of leather seats and clean linen filled her senses, and the rumble of an engine signaled movement. Then nothing. When Katherine regained consciousness, fragments of reality slowly pieced themselves together. The first thing she registered was the sterile scent of antiseptic, sharp and clinical, accompanied by the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. Her eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. Panic surged through her, an instinctual fear snapping her fully awake. "Her baby," she gasped, attempting to push herself up, but a firm yet gentle hand pressed against her shoulder, urging her to stay down. "Easy," a calm voice instructed. Katherine's vision cleared, revealing the face of a stranger, tall, with dark hair and piercing eyes filled with genuine concern. It wasn't Robert. It wasn't anyone familiar. Yet there was something about him, a steadiness, a quiet strength, that made her pause. "Where am I?" she managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're at County Hospital," the man replied, adjusting the blanket over her carefully. "You collapsed from exhaustion and stress, but your baby is fine." Relief flooded through her, so intense that tears pricked the corners of her eyes. Her baby was safe. Then it all came rushing back. Robert, the gas station, the text message, the photo of him laughing with another woman at a beach resort. A sharp pain twisted in her chest. But before she could let it consume her, the man spoke again. I found you on the side of the road. You were barely conscious. I had to get you here fast. His voice carried undeniable concern, though he remained composed. Katherine swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the blanket. You saved me? She stammered. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. I guess you could say that. She stared at him, struggling to process it all. Why would a stranger stop? Why would he care? Who are you? She asked hesitantly. Lewis Carter, he answered simply. Doctor. Her breath hitched. A doctor, of all people, who could have driven past her in the storm had stopped to save her life. But looking into Lewis's eyes filled with kindness and sincerity, she knew she couldn't lie. Her lips trembled as she admitted the truth. He left me. Lewis's jaw tightened, his entire demeanor shifting. What do you mean he left you? His voice softened, but beneath it lurked a dangerous edge. We were on a road trip, Katherine began, her voice shaky. He pulled into a gas station, told me to go inside, and when I came out he was gone. A heavy silence settled between them. Lewis's expression darkened further. You're 8 months pregnant, he stated flatly. She let out a hollow laugh. Trust me, I know. After a beat, Lewis shook his head in disbelief. Where is he now? Katherine hesitated, the bitterness rising like bile in her throat. At a beach resort with his mistress. For a moment Lewis didn't move. Then his entire body went rigid. Through clenched teeth he muttered, that bastard. His anger startled her. Not pity or empty sympathy but raw, protective rage. It ignited something within her too. Not sadness but strength. She blinked, thrown off by how her chest tightened with something unfamiliar yet empowering. Leaning closer, Lewis locked eyes with her. You don't have to tell me everything, but I need you to know something, he said, his voice steady but firm. You're not alone. Her breath hitched. Tears welled in her eyes, but they weren't born of despair. They were tears of gratitude. For the first time since Robert had abandoned her, Katherine believed those words. She wasn't alone. Not anymore. In contrast to Katherine's situation, Robert Calloway lounged in a private cabana on the pristine beach of an exclusive resort, sipping an expensive cocktail as the ocean waves crashed nearby. Beside him sat Grace, his young lover, giggling flirtatiously while scrolling through her phone. The golden sun bathed them in warmth, creating an idyllic scene far removed from the chaos he had left behind. Robert, now reveling under his alias Robert, felt untouchable, convinced that abandoning Katherine at the desolate gas station was the best decision he'd ever made. No responsibilities, no crying baby to deal with, he mused aloud, smirking at Grace. She purred in agreement, clinking her glass against his. You're so much better off without her. He leaned back, basking in the illusion of freedom. To him, Katherine was nothing but a burden, a fragile, emotional weight holding him back from the life he deserved. He dismissed any thought of her, 8 months pregnant and alone, stranded on a cold highway. Instead, he indulged in fantasies of his future. Luxurious vacations, endless nights of carefree indulgence, and Grace by his side. His pride swelled as he recounted how easily he'd discarded his old life, proud of his calculated escape. Little did he know, the world outside this paradise was already turning against him. For now, though, Robert basked in self-congratulatory bliss, oblivious to the storm brewing beyond the horizon, one that would soon shatter his carefully constructed facade. The morning after Katherine's collapse at the gas station, sunlight filtered weakly through the hospital blinds, casting soft golden streaks across the sterile room. She lay in the bed, her body still heavy with exhaustion, but her mind raced with questions about what came next. Her baby was safe, she could feel his gentle movements beneath her hand, but she had nothing else, no money, no home, no plan. Just the lingering ache of betrayal, and the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her chest. Lewis sat quietly beside her, watching as she stared out the window, lost in thought. Sensing her unease, he leaned forward slightly, his voice breaking the silence. I know you've been through hell, CLA, he began, choosing his words carefully. But you're not alone in this. You don't have to figure everything out right now. Katherine turned to him, her eyes searching his face for any hint of judgment or pity. Instead, she found only sincerity. What am I supposed to do? She whispered, her voice trembling. I can't go back to him. Not after everything. You don't have to, Louis said firmly. And you won't. Not if I have anything to say about it. It wasn't just empty reassurance. Within hours, Louis had arranged for Katherine to stay with him until she regained her footing. His home was modest, a small cottage nestled near the edge of town, but it radiated warmth. Books lined every available surface, mismatched furniture created cozy corners, and the faint scent of lavender lingered in the air. It was worlds apart from the cold opulence of Robert's mansion, and yet, it felt more like a sanctuary than anywhere Katherine had ever lived. Over the next few days, Louis ensured she had everything she needed: fresh linens, warm meals, even a stack of baby books that made her laugh despite herself. But more than material comforts, it was his unwavering presence that steadied her. He drove her to prenatal appointments, helped her navigate bureaucratic hurdles without an ID, and listened patiently when she poured out her fears late at night. Slowly, Katherine began to realize something she hadn't dared believe before. She didn't need Robert, or anyone else, to define her worth. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen. One crisp afternoon, as Katherine sorted through a box of donated sewing supplies Louis had brought home, inspiration struck. She had always loved fashion, sketching designs in notebooks during quiet moments before Robert's demands consumed her life. Now, with motherhood looming ahead, she saw an opportunity to blend her creativity with her new role. I'm going to start designing custom baby clothes, she announced suddenly, surprising even herself with the conviction in her voice. Louis looked up from his laptop, raising an eyebrow. Baby clothes? Yes, she said firmly, gesturing animatedly despite the waddle caused by her swollen belly. Tiny dresses, rompers, blankets. Things that are both beautiful and practical. Something meaningful. A slow smile spread across Louis's face. That sounds incredible, CLA. You should absolutely go for it. With Louis's encouragement, Katherine threw herself into her work. She spent hours sketching designs, experimenting with fabrics, and teaching herself basic business skills online. Louis helped wherever he could, whether it was setting up a website or connecting her with local seamstresses who could bring her ideas to life. Slowly but surely, her dream began to take shape. Her first sale, a custom-made onesie for a friend's newborn, was a turning point. The joy on the mother's face when she saw the intricate embroidery brought tears to Katherine's eyes. It wasn't just fabric and thread. It was love, care, and resilience stitched together. Word spread quickly in the tight-knit community, and soon, orders began pouring in. As Katherine worked tirelessly to build her business, she also started reclaiming pieces of herself she thought were lost forever. She took long walks along the beach, joined a local art class, and even volunteered at a community center. Each step forward was small but significant, chipping away at the walls Robert's betrayal had built around her heart. With Louis by her side, she began to imagine a future filled with purpose and happiness, a future she had once believed was impossible. While Katherine embraced her newfound independence, Robert Sterling's world continued to unravel. It began with a grainy security camera clip, a brief snippet of footage showing Robert pulling into a desolate gas station late at night. The timestamp on the video marked the exact moment Katherine stepped out of their sleek black car, visibly pregnant and vulnerable. Seconds later, the vehicle peeled away, leaving her stranded under the flickering glow of a streetlight. Within hours, the clip went viral, igniting outrage across social media platforms. Hashtags like #JusticeForCLA and #BoycottSterlingCorp trended worldwide as people condemned Robert's actions. Comment sections boiled over with fury. How could someone do this to a pregnant woman? He left his own child to fend for itself. The betrayal struck a nerve globally, sparking debates about morality, accountability, and the treatment of women. As public scrutiny intensified, investigative journalists dug deeper, uncovering layers of Robert's deceit. Photos surfaced of him lounging at an exclusive beach resort mere days after abandoning Katherine, his arm draped casually around Grace, the other woman he had chosen over his wife. These images spread like wildfire, painting him not just as a neglectful husband, but as a cold-hearted adulterer who celebrated his betrayal without remorse. Social media users dissected every detail, from the luxury of the resort to the carefree smiles on both their faces. Robert's carefully constructed facade crumbled before the court of public opinion. What started as whispers among industry insiders escalated into full-blown scandal when evidence emerged linking Robert to unethical business practices within Sterling Enterprises. Leaked documents revealed embezzlement schemes, insider trading, and manipulative deals that prioritized profit over ethics. The man who had once been lauded as a corporate titan was now exposed as a fraud. The fallout was swift and merciless. Major clients severed ties with Sterling Enterprises, fearing association with such a tarnished reputation. Stock prices plummeted overnight, wiping out billions in market value. High-profile partners distanced themselves publicly, issuing statements condemning Robert's behavior while scrambling to protect their own brands. The board of directors called an emergency meeting, where they unanimously voted to remove Robert from his position as CEO. His name was erased from company letterheads, replaced by interim leadership aiming to salvage what little remained of the firm's credibility. Even Grace, the woman he thought would stand by him through anything, abandoned ship the moment things turned sour. She emptied the credit cards he had given her, packed her designer bags, and disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a mocking note. Oops, looks like you lost everything. Guess I'll take my leave now. Have fun cleaning up your mess. Robert's personal relationships followed suit. Friends he had entertained with lavish dinners and expensive gifts stopped answering his calls. Colleagues avoided him in hallways, pretending not to notice the hollow look in his eyes or the trembling hands clutching his phone, desperate for any lifeline. Invitations to elite galas and networking events ceased entirely. Even charitable organizations revoked his honorary titles, unwilling to be associated with his toxic legacy. Isolated and humiliated, Robert found himself drowning in a sea of consequences entirely of his own making. Every door slammed shut, every opportunity evaporated, and every reminder of his former life became a cruel taunt. He wandered aimlessly through the remnants of his existence, a man stripped bare of power, privilege, and purpose. And yet, the most devastating blow came not from losing his wealth or status, but from realizing how irrelevant he had become to those he hurt. Katherine, the woman he abandoned, moved forward without him, building a life filled with love, purpose, and resilience. Her strength stood as a stark contrast to his ruin, a testament to the fact that she no longer needed him. Not as a partner, not as a provider, not even as a memory. Robert Sterling, once untouchable, was reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale, a symbol of hubris, betrayal, and the inevitable collapse that follows unchecked selfishness. Abandoned by Grace, stripped of his wealth, and ostracized by society, he found himself spiraling into despair. His luxurious penthouse apartment had been replaced by a dingy studio in a crumbling building, its walls stained with water damage, and its windows rattling with the wind. Every night, he drowned his sorrows in cheap liquor, staring blankly at the ceiling as guilt gnawed at him. Desperation clawed at his chest, driving him to concoct a reckless plan. One evening, as rain lashed against the grimy windowpane, he pulled out an old burner phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "I need your help," he muttered into the receiver, his voice trembling. "There's someone I have to see." Unbeknownst to Katherine, Robert had discovered her whereabouts through social media posts made by well-meaning locals praising her budding business. Consumed by jealousy and regret, he decided to confront her, not because he cared about her happiness, but because he couldn't bear the thought of her thriving without him. The dramatic encounter came on a chilly autumn afternoon. Katherine was arranging a display of her latest creations in the storefront window of her rented workspace when she heard the bell above the door jingle. Turning around, she froze. There he stood, Robert Sterling, drenched from the rain, his once immaculate appearance reduced to disheveled misery. "CLA," he croaked, taking a hesitant step forward. "Please, we need to talk." Her heart pounded, anger surging through her veins. "How dare you show up here?" she spat, her voice shaking. "After everything you've done?" Robert flinched but pressed on. "I made a mistake. I know that now. I want to make things right." Katherine laughed bitterly. "Make things right? You abandoned me 8 months pregnant, Robert. You humiliated me, betrayed me, and destroyed my trust. You don't get to waltz back into my life and pretend you care." Before Robert could respond, Louis appeared in the doorway, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. Without a word, he moved to stand beside Katherine, his presence a silent declaration of support. Robert's eyes widened in recognition, and for the first time, genuine fear flickered across his face. "You need to leave," Louis said evenly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Now." For a moment, Robert hesitated, his gaze darting between Katherine and Louis. Then with a defeated sigh, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the rain. As the door closed behind him, Katherine exhaled shakily, leaning into Louis's side. "He'll never hurt you again," Louis murmured, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I promise." With Robert out of their lives for good, Katherine focused on nurturing her growing business. Word of mouth spread quickly in the tight-knit community, and soon her boutique, christened Little Wonders, became a local sensation. Customers praised not only the quality of her designs, but also the love and care evident in every stitch. The years that followed Katherine's harrowing journey from betrayal to independence were transformative in ways she could never have imagined. With Louis by her side, every step forward felt like a new foundation being laid, not just for herself, but for the son she had brought into the world against all odds. As Little Wonders flourished into a thriving boutique celebrated for its creativity and heart, Katherine found within herself an unshakable strength she hadn't known existed. Her designs became more than fabric stitched together. They told stories of resilience, hope, and love. Each piece carried fragments of her past, the pain, the struggle, the triumph, and served as a testament to how far she had come. Customers often remarked on the warmth and intention behind her work, unaware that what they saw was merely a reflection of the woman who created it, someone who had learned to turn despair into beauty. Louis remained a constant presence throughout this evolution. He wasn't just the man who had saved her life that stormy night. He was now her confidant, her cheerleader, and her partner in raising her son. From teaching him how to ride a bike to helping with bedtime stories, Louis seamlessly stepped into the role of a father figure, without ever overstepping or seeking recognition. Their bond deepened naturally, built not on grand gestures but on small, meaningful moments shared over coffee in quiet mornings, or laughter-filled evenings, when their boy tumbled into bed exhausted from play. For Katherine, seeing Louis interact so effortlessly with her child filled her with gratitude, and something else she hadn't dared name at first, longing. As her son grew older, his curiosity about the world blossomed alongside his admiration for Louis. "Why isn't Louis my dad?" he once asked innocently during one of their walks through town. The question caught Katherine off guard, stirring emotions she'd kept tucked away. She knelt down to meet his gaze, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Because we're lucky to have him," she replied softly, choosing honesty over evasion. "He chose us, sweetheart. And sometimes, that makes people even more special." That evening, as Katherine tucked her son into bed, she reflected on his words. It wasn't the first time she'd wondered if there might be something deeper between her and Louis. Over the years, their connection had evolved beyond friendship, yet neither had voiced the possibility of taking things further. Both carried scars from past relationships, Katherine from Robert's betrayal, and Louis from a failed marriage that had ended long before they met. But perhaps those scars were proof enough that they understood each other in ways no one else ever could. They had weathered storms separately and together, and somehow, their lives had intertwined so completely that imagining a future apart seemed unimaginable. It was Louis who finally broke the silence one crisp spring evening. They sat together on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance across the yard while their son played inside. "CLA," Louis began hesitantly, his voice barely audible above the chirping crickets. Katherine turned to him, her brow furrowing slightly. "What is it?" He exhaled slowly, his hands gripping the edge of the swing. "I've been thinking about us." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Catherine's heartbeat quickened, though she forced herself to remain calm. Us? She echoed, her tone neutral despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. Yes, Louis continued, his gaze steady despite the vulnerability etched across his face. For years now, you've been everything to me. Not just because of what happened back then, but because of who you are. You've shown me what real strength looks like, what it means to build a life out of nothing, but sheer will and love. And your son, he's incredible. I can't imagine my life without either of you. Tears welled in Catherine's eyes, blurring her vision. She reached for his hand, her fingers trembling as they intertwined with his. Louis, words escaped her, overwhelmed by the weight of what he was saying, and what she felt too afraid to admit aloud. You've been my anchor, she whispered finally. Through everything. I don't know where I'd be without you. A slow smile spread across Louis's face, lighting up his features. Then maybe it's time we stop pretending this is just whatever it is, he said gently. Because I think we both know it's more than that. Their decision to take the next step didn't happen overnight. But once they did, it felt like coming home. Katherine and Louis moved forward cautiously, mindful of the complexities involved in blending their lives fully. But their son embraced the change wholeheartedly, proudly introducing Louis as my dad to anyone who would listen. To them, it wasn't about erasing the past, but building something stronger. A family forged not out of obligation but choice. Not long after, another chapter unfolded. Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news was met with pure joy rather than fear. Together, they prepared for the arrival of their second child, painting nurseries, picking out tiny outfits, and marveling at the miracle of creating life out of such profound love. When their daughter was born, she completed the picture, a testament to the happiness they had fought so hard to achieve. Years later, as Katherine stood in the garden of their cozy home, watching her children chase butterflies under the golden afternoon sun, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Beside her, Louis wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. You okay? He murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. More than okay, she replied, leaning into him. We did it, Louis. We really did it. And they had. Against all odds, they had built a life rooted in trust, respect, and unconditional love. Betrayal had once threatened to destroy Katherine, but instead, it had set her free. To find herself, to rediscover love, and to create a future brighter than any she could have dreamed. Together, they proved that happiness wasn't given. It was earned, nurtured, and cherished. And theirs was a story destined to endure forever. If this story of resilience, love, and second chances resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales that remind us of the strength we all carry within. Let us know in the comments, what was your favorite moment? And if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Together, let's keep spreading stories that uplift and empower. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your support means the world to us, and we're so grateful to have you here. Until next time, take care, stay strong, and remember, no matter where life takes you, there's always a new beginning waiting just around the corner. See you again soon.